I read some of Sakisaka's manga when I was a teen, and I'll admit, I had mixed feelings when it came to her manga. Her art and watercolor covers were some of the most lovely shoujo art I've seen, but her story and characters, I wasn't that much of a fan. I couldn't get attached to any of the characters, and the conflicts weren't my favorite either. Of course, that was way back in high school, and I forgot most of what I've read, so I thought, why not go back to reading them again? There have been some cases where I grew more of an appreciation for certain anime or manga than I had when I was a teen, or I just simply like them now. So, who knows how I feel about them now. Though, rather than just rereading the few manga I tried to read as a teen, I thought to also check out her other works that I could find. Like, what if there's some hidden gems I missed? I thought this would be more fun to do, and I get to add more completed manga to my reading list. Anyway, in this video, I'll be going over 7 of her completed manga, including a few of her one-shots. She has a lot of one-shots. And as I'm making this, I'll be unable to include Sakura since all the chapters aren't out yet as I'm making this video. Keep in mind that there will be spoilers as I'll talk about them, and these are my personal opinions. So without further ado, time to go over my thoughts on some of Sakisaka's manga. Otome no Itari is a one-shot about a heroine named Kohane Kashiwagi who gains an interest in her quiet classmate named Kiryu after he offers his umbrella. Since then, she's been curious about him and gets to know him little by little, which later turns into a romance between the two. It may sound like a simple premise, which it is, but it's got some meaningful moments rather than just focusing on the romance. And despite being a one-shot, it does a good job in letting us readers get to know the two leads, such as what they're like as people and how the two come to understand one another. It even covers topics such as being afraid to say what's on your mind and the consequences it can lead, hesitating on what you want and being afraid of what will come from it, not even knowing who you are as a person because you've been going along with what others have been telling you, and that just cause a person is quiet and often alone, it doesn't mean they're miserable or a bad person. Even the romance between Kohane and Kiryu was pretty cute. I liked how Kohane developed an interest in him from the one act of kindness, and he remained in her thoughts ever since rather than just falling for him on the spot. And I do like how she does try to get to know him despite some assumptions she's had, and even tried to get into reading and ask for recommendations. Despite not being that much of a reader like he is, I mean, Kiryu even called her out on it. She does read the book he recommended and gave her honest opinions on it. Honestly, one of the best ways to bond with an introvert is showing genuine interest in their hobbies and having discussions on it. I mean, just look at the face when Kohane told him she finished the book. Okay, it's a small panel, but just look at that. It's adorable. Okay, I have to talk about the male Kiryu for a minute cause I heavily relate to him. We're both quiet, we like to do our own thing. If someone came up to us first, it wouldn't be too much of an issue conversing with them. We bond with others by sharing similar interests and hobbies, and we tend to give people the wrong impression. Only difference is that I'm not as honest and straightforward as he is. Like, here's a scene that stood out to me. When Kohane asks Kiryu why he keeps to himself and doesn't talk to others, he responds with, "When I'm alone, I just want to read books. I also come to the library just cause I want to read. I'm not alone because I can't get into everyone's circle. And I don't come here just cause I don't have anywhere I belong." And as an introvert that keeps to themselves and reads or play games alone, I felt that. And when he also said that he doesn't think of himself as anyone that should be pitied after Kohane admitted that she kinda saw him as pitiful was also a great scene. He's very comfortable with himself and just does his own thing. It would have been easy to give him a tragic backstory to why he's quiet, but that doesn't happen. He's simply a quiet dude that does his own thing. Anyway, just like Kohane, Kiryu also makes an effort on his end. He gets to know her when they had that book discussion and listen to her honest thoughts about it. Well, more like analyze, cause this dude seriously made this observation. At least it got Kohane to open up about her own struggles to him. Turns out she's afraid to say what's on her mind and struggles with knowing who she is and what she even likes because she's lived her life making others happy and caring too much what they would think. These two end up bonding as they have these honest conversations. But of course, once things got slightly romantic, Kohane panics and avoids Kiryu due to her lack of confidence, and afraid what he and others would think if she admitted her feelings. It even led to a misunderstanding from her friends that Kiryu had been following her and making her uncomfortable. I honestly didn't mind this drama though, since I can understand why she would react that way, and it does show Kohane what would happen if you don't speak up. It may push others away. And the misunderstanding doesn't last very long either. I mean, it is a one-shot, so that was nice. It gave some time for the main leads to have this cute confession scene at the end. By the time I finished this one-shot, I was very satisfied. The two leads are great, and the manga did a great job showing how the two bonded despite the short time. It was able to fit in just the right amount of content. This should be an interesting one because Watashi no Koibito, or My Lover as I'll be calling it, is Sakisaka's first manga with chapters, so we're really diving into her earliest works. Even her art here reminds me of that rough sketch-like style you would see in the early 2000s manga, but still has traces of her soft style. The manga also gives us some stuff about Sakisaka herself, such as this "what kind of person she was" page. It was fun to learn a little about her as she was making her first manga. Well, let's see what this is all about. My Lover is about Emi, a young girl who's in the shadow of her older sister Miki, and often compared to her. Her older sister Miki is beautiful, kind, smart, popular, and has a boyfriend. One day, Emi gets a call from a guy named Junta Shimataka, who confesses his love to, who he assumed to be, Miki over the phone. Not sure what to do, she quickly hangs up and continues on with her life as she's gonna start high school soon, hoping she'll have a fresh start. However, she ends up meeting that caller at her high school, and the two ended up forming, I guess, a bond, friendship of some kind. She did tell him about the misunderstanding, and he's all gung-ho about it because he technically didn't get rejected. And yes, he is aware that Miki has a boyfriend. Just look at that face. I can't remember if there was a time I found a male lead's face to be punchable, but this one here takes the cake. Oh, and not too long later, Emi already wants Junta to be her boyfriend. I smell a mess brewing. Well, despite my first impressions of the first chapter, the manga ended up not being as bad as I thought it would be. It legit gave me some pain emotions as I was reading, and that's mostly because of all the shit our heroine has to go through. Yet she still remains positive and kind as much as she could. I'll admit, I wasn't expecting to like her, but the more I read, the more I wished nothing but happiness for her. Her parents suck and aren't subtle with the favoritism. The way her classmates treat her when it comes to her sister was just terrible. And it's sad that she can't seem to find anyone who would like her for her rather than her sister. I mean, the two guys that showed romantic interest in her had a crush on her sister first. But by the time I was finished, while I thought Junta was a bit lame, I was happy that Emi finally got some kind of happy end. With all she's been through, she never hated her sister, and I'm so glad because Miki isn't a terrible person and Emi knows this herself. It really shows her maturity. It's also shown that Miki's the only family who's truly cared for her and showed affection while the parents don't. I can't get over how when it's time for the parents to apologize when Emi had enough, the mom's apology was so lackluster I was annoyed. After all those years of comparing your daughters and barely showing any care towards Emi, you're gonna have to do a lot more than just a mediocre apology.
Boo! You stink!
Oh, well, the manga does give a reason why Miki was favored in the family, but the parents still suck, and not a solid enough reason to treat Emi like she's some stranger they brought in. Now, despite Emi being one of the best parts of the manga, I can't say that Junta was much of a good male lead. While he's certainly not as bad as I thought he'd be, he still wasn't a strong character and love interest. They did try to give him something other than the guy crushing on Miki by introducing his dilemma with not being able to play basketball anymore, but it wasn't very interesting to me. But I will say how he confessed to Emi was pretty cute and does have his good moments like when he stands up for her. Though their romance could have been a bit better. I'd say they almost had it, because at least they showed them as friends first and their interactions weren't just about Miki like I thought it'd be. Yet I couldn't tell when Junta started to like Emi romantically. Because that random guy confessed to Emi? Oh yeah, there's this small love triangle around the end, and it's that guy who rejected Emi in the past because he liked Miki. But hey, at least it was short. Emi deserved a good male lead, and Junta's not the worst, so I was left feeling fine after they got together. If there was one thing that bothered me is how much content there was in 6 chapters that there wasn't much time for the manga to breathe because of all the subplots happening. Aside from Emi having an inferiority complex, there was her growing relationship with Junta, Junta's basketball thing, the fact that Miki was actually adopted and her birth mom has been asking her to live with her, Miki's boyfriend possibly cheating and being too friendly with the students. Ew. The parents being awful towards Emi and having to apologize for it. Emi and Miki's sister relationship. And that guy who rejected Emi coming back into her life and wanting to date her this time. Ew. As you can tell, that's a lot for a short manga to cover. which makes the pacing a bit fast. It would have been best if the manga was a bit longer, cause some of the stuff they had would have been interesting and great to explore and expand on. Like, I would have loved to see more of Emi and Miki. Their sister relationship was one of the best parts. Despite some complaints I had, my lover ended up being a lot better than I was expecting. For Sakisaka's first manga, I'd say she did a pretty good job. I so wish we had another chapter of Emi and Junta or Emi and Miki, but sadly, the manga actually ends at chapter 6 and then a couple one-shots follows after. Though since the focus is my lover and one of the one-shots irritated me for reasons, I'll be moving on. One of Sakisaka's most popular and well-known manga, next to Blue Spring Ride. I remember this being incredibly popular back then day while I was searching for shoujo to read, but it never caught my interest despite the hype and this supposed twist I kept hearing about. Well, now that I finally gave it a chance and read it, I have a lot of thoughts, which I'll go over. Strobe Edge is about a high school girl named Ninako Kinoshita who had never fallen in love before until she met Ren, her popular classmate. They had some pleasant interactions and it didn't take long before she realized she'd fallen for him. Unfortunately for her, it's revealed that Ren already has a girlfriend. Coincidentally, the girlfriend is her childhood friend's older sister. Though her being the childhood friend's older sister didn't really matter much to the plot as we rarely see them interact. So, Ninako tackles having feelings for someone who's already in a relationship, learning about love itself, I think, and tries to maintain a friendship with Ren, as well as getting to know the other characters in this manga. I'll be honest, the first half of the manga was really rough for me to get through. However, the second half got a bit better. The first 10 chapters were the slowest parts for me. Nothing really grabbed my attention for the majority of the time, almost like nothing is really happening. The most I can remember is Ninako reminding herself that Ren has a girlfriend but she's in love with him and will never let that go. Oh, and there's Daiki, Ninako's supposed childhood friend. Ugh. That guy is gonna get his own section cause I have so much to say about him, which I'll get to soon. But I will say that he's the childhood friend, they have history together, and he's been in love with Ninako ever since. Though got rejected since she's in love with Ren, and shortly later got into a relationship with Sayuri, one of her friends. Anyway, despite the rough start, the manga started to get more entertaining once Ando came into the picture. He's my favorite character in Strobe Edge. He's hilarious, had more depth than just being the love rival, and had some fun and great scenes with both leads. One of my favorite chapters was this whole Ninako thinks Ando's dying arc. It was hilarious how nothing was taken seriously while poor Ninako was worried sick. Now this is something I wish the manga had more of. The characters just being goofy teens doing goofy shit while also showing how close they are when taking a break from the drama. Another thing I noticed at some point in the manga is Ninako and Ren talking and finally behaving like they're friends. Not much, but it's something since they were supposed friends early in the story. For me, one of the biggest problems was Ren and Ninako as a couple. I could not care much for them when they got together in the end. They would have worked more for me if they actually behaved like their friends and then grew closer and closer. I remember their romantic moments depending too much on oopsie daisies, Ninako being clumsy, and misunderstandings rather than actual chemistry. There were a few moments like that, such as Ren having a genuine smile and feeling comfortable with Ninako, and her finding out that he loves sweets. Though, most of the time, it felt more like she was walking on eggshells around Ren every time she's reminded how much she loves him and can't give up on him despite being in a relationship. The story should have taken its time with her feelings towards Ren. Her falling in love with Ren happened way too fast. Perhaps after they actually spent time together as friends, then the manga would feel less slow and them being together would feel more satisfying. However, Ando and Ninako was way too likable for me to root for Ninako and Ren. I enjoyed their dynamic more, she seemed more comfortable with him, they had more believable chemistry, and Ando wanted to change for the better after falling for her. So, it's another case of me rooting for the second male lead. I mean, rooting for the second male lead who'll never get together with the female lead is nothing new, but come on, there was way too many reasons why he's better that's just silly at this point. But props to Ninako for taking Ando's romantic feelings seriously and not going out with him just to get over Ren. I did like that. Though whenever Ando confronts Ninako and they would have conversations why she can't move on, we get told the same thing. She simply loves Ren and she can't help it, and presents that as her idea of love. I mean, I'm not expecting her to have a deep reason or what, but with how it's presented, it could have been better, especially that the manga tackles the subject of love. Which reminds me, what is her idea of love? I don't think she really explained what that's all about and doesn't expand beyond I can't help but love him. Even if the manga wants to show how strong first love feelings can be, that's not really an answer or gives me an idea about her idea of love, except I'll love him from afar and not move on while wanting to be close to him as friends. I don't know about you, but something about that just doesn't seem right. It's like she's waiting for Ren and his girlfriend to break up. Makes it a bit hard to root for her or feel sorry for her when it appears as if she has ulterior motives, you know? Another thing that makes it harder for me to root for these two is I wasn't a fan how there were some scenes where Ren is catching feelings and low-key flirting. The manga can claim, oh, he just doesn't know his own feelings, but he is still in a relationship. Wouldn't he at least think, oh shit, this may give the wrong idea? He can't be that oblivious. He should have stopped the moment he held her close to hide her when he didn't really have to. I should talk about Ren and his ex, Mayu. I don't know how others feel about these two, but I wish the manga showed more of these two cause it's clear the relationship is much deeper than it appears and they go way back. I want to know how or why he fell for Mayu in the first place, what they were like before, and what they're like as a couple. Sadly, we didn't get to see that much of them as a couple from Ren's point of view. I got the sense that Ren isn't in the relationship just cause someone asked him out and he's like, why not? He truly does care for her and I wish the manga showed us more than that. It would show us another side to Ren. This is a small thing, but it's strange how the friend group was incredibly underwhelming despite making multiple appearances, and Sakisaka giving us pages of their names and personalities. I only know Sayuri because of Daiki, but she later grew on me after this scene with her ex, and the two having a rather mature discussion about why they broke up and what could have been done differently. Though of course, that doesn't mean that they should get back together, more like they shouldn't let it happen again with their current partners. While I still don't like Daiki and Sayuri as a couple, it did make me like Sayuri as a character more. Though it bothered me how we don't really get to see Sayuri or the other girls spend time with Ninako. I swear, it's like everyone from Ninako's life slowly faded away since Ren got into her life. But I will say when they do show up, it is sweet how they always have each other's back and support each other. That's another thing I wish we had more of. Speaking of friends, time for me to talk about Daiki. The childhood friend who didn't have much of an impact to the story as I thought he would, yet managed to annoy me greatly. The thing is, Daiki's crush on Ninako could have been cut out since the manga doesn't take its time with that, and it was over before anything could happen. Hell, the crush plot moves on super quick now that Sayuri has a crush on him, and the manga trying a bit too hard and trying to get me to see them as a couple. So much for showing us how deep Daiki and Ninako's bond goes, only for him to move on in less than 2 chapters and officially get with Sayuri in less than 10 chapters. Again, I didn't care about them as a couple, I just wanted to see Ninako's love life and the girlfriend drama. And it did bother me how the two are supposed to be such close childhood friends, yet we rarely see them interact after the rejection. It's not like they left on bad terms. I thought Daiki would have stuck around more and we'll get more scenes of him and Ninako. Especially that Ren's girlfriend is his freaking sister. It's like now that his role of being the childhood friend with unrequited feelings for the female lead was used up, out he goes. I thought the manga would take the approach of Ninako actually going out with Daiki, but later realizes that while she does care for him, she doesn't love him romantically as she thought she might have, while with Ren, it's different. It would give some interesting scenes as both leads would be in relationships with other people and discovering love along the way. And when Daiki and Ninako break up, then I can see him getting over her soon, rather than super quick, and getting together with Sayuri later. This could just be me, but I get annoyed whenever Sayuri and Daiki pop up in the manga. Like when Daiki revealed that he'll be moving with his dad to wherever, I was like, okay. It's just that they made me feel nothing. So when the whole breaking up arc happened, I could care less because I know it wasn't gonna last anyway, and it's just some drama to fill in. And Daiki had the option to move out or not the entire time, so the whole thing was just pointless. So much for that mature scene of them accepting change and not giving up their feelings. I only felt bad for the dad in the end. Which brings me to this. Daiki's a bit of an asshole. There were a couple moments that made me go, wow, what a dick. Like this panel here, it felt like a huge middle finger after making the whole staying with dad situation a big deal. And this scene here where Ninako was invited by Sayuri to spend Christmas with her and Daiki since it's just the two of them and Ninako was alone at the time. Rather than Daiki making her feel welcome like Sayuri was, he just makes this expression and I feel bad that Ninako left them with a kick she got at the cafe and went off alone. Childhood friend my ass. You'd think since they're both friends with Ninako, we'll probably get a cute scene with the three of them, but nope, we just get Daiki being a dick. And it's not like he's going anywhere, he'll still get to be together with Sayuri. Oh, and Ninako was the reason why Daiki didn't move with his dad and got back together with Sayuri. So yeah, fuck Daiki.
Boo! You stink!
Well, ran over, and I'm getting back to what I think of the manga as a whole. Overall, I personally do not like Strobe Edge. And it's too bad because the manga does have a couple good stuff, such as Ando. Out of all the characters from Sakisaka's manga that I've read so far, he's my favorite and the reason why I was able to stick with Strobe Edge. He and Ren's friendship are also one of the best parts. I love how the manga shows how goofy they can be together, but also how deep their friendship goes. Like, you can't blame either one for when their friendship crumbled in the past. Some may not like it, but the premise of Strobe Edge isn't a bad one either. There's potential for good drama and exploring the complicated situation of having feelings for someone in a relationship while being friends with them. They almost had it, but there was too many issues for me to fully enjoy the manga, and I felt that the manga focused on the wrong things. I would have liked this more if the manga actually took its time from the beginning with the characters and their relationships. The quick pace of everyone getting together or catching feelings threw me off for a bit that I couldn't fully immerse myself into it, especially during the first 10 chapters because those were incredibly slow. Another thing is that it gets repetitive real fast when we're constantly reminded that Ninako is in love with a guy who has a girlfriend and could never move on. Yet she never really tried. Why not focus on Ninako and Ren developing their friendship first? There were a few scenes where they behaved like it, but not really enough to justify Ninako wanting to stay as Ren's friend. But yeah, again, Strobe Edge had the potential, but it didn't deliver for me. Well, seems like Sakisaka is tackling forbidden love here. As it says here, Anna is in love with her cousin Reiji, but of course she can't openly confess or be honest with her feelings because they're cousins and afraid of what society would say about it. Yet she still followed him to whatever high school he was going to. I'll just go ahead and say it, this wasn't Sakisaka's best work. While I wouldn't consider this the worst, it's this one. It definitely had its issues. Ignoring the forbidden romance between cousins angle, there's absolutely no interesting chemistry between the two. It's very by the numbers in terms of the usual Sakisaka tropes, which is funny to say considering this was released in 2006, one of her early works. Both leads were boring. The art looked rather rough at times. Not bad, but just rough. And the romance was very clunky. The only saving grace was Rumi, Anna's best friend. She may have a cute innocent face, but she's got a sharp tongue and attitude. One of my favorite genre of characters. I enjoyed seeing her interact with Reiji and Anna. She's small and ready to fight, and she's the only one I rooted for. When it came to Sakisaka's characters, especially if they're the female lead's friend, I found her to be a breath of fresh air and one of the best in my opinion. As mentioned here, it says that she has a secret, and that secret is that Rumi is a lesbian and in love with Anna. Honestly, as soon as I read that Rumi had a secret, her being in love with Anna was the first thing that popped into my mind, so I wasn't really that surprised. Of course, Rumi gets rejected, but the two still keep a sweet friendship. While I found Anna to be a boring heroine, her best moments were when she didn't hesitate to stand up for Rumi after her sexuality was revealed in front of her classmates. And she never distanced herself from Rumi after finding out too. And it is sweet that Rumi continues to be a good friend for Anna, and does stand up to Reiji after hearing her confession woes. Oh right, I gotta talk about Reiji. There's little I can say about him. All I could gather is that he's the most popular guy at their high school, he's nicer than he looks, and he'll always have Anna's back despite being cold from time to time. I found him more interesting whenever Rumi's involved. But with Anna, all they got going on is that they're cousins and society would reject them. But the manga forgot to give them believable chemistry and show that they do have a close relationship so that you would have to feel sorry for them, even just a little. Now, these type of forbidden romance stories in manga aren't my thing at all. I'm more into these. But I would assume I'm in for a wild ride or something, yet I felt nothing by the time I finished. Though the manga did have some unintentional funny moments, like here when Rumi called Reiji plain and boring for not considering his cousin as a potential romantic partner. But yeah, definitely not my favorite Sakisaka manga so far, but just like Ando, Rumi deserves a good girlfriend and wish I could see her in a different manga. I I was a bit hesitant on starting this one because of how the manga has 2 heroines and 2 male leads. I was worried that maybe there wouldn't be a good balance of our leads getting their spotlight, or there'll be an obnoxious love triangle or square drama, or something like that. Well, while it did somewhat have those problems, I was pleasantly surprised for the most part, which I'll explain as I go along. Love Me Not is about these 4 high schoolers, though we focus more on the 2 heroines and their growing friendship despite being different and having different views of love. We do get to see both heroines' idea of love, but it doesn't really become the focus, and both got over their differences in a few chapters, which is fine because that means we can focus on other things like their friendship and how they each tackle romance with their male leads. And that's where I start to get mixed feelings. I'll start with Yuna's side of things. Yuna's idea of romance is, well, a typical shoujo romance, where romance would hit you where you least expect it in that way. Yuna is shy, a romantic at heart, huge manga reader, and has a thing for Prince Philip from Sleeping Beauty.
Once upon a dream.
Oh,
Philip! Stop it! Stop that! Hey, Philip!
While not the most unique shoujo heroine, I honestly liked her. In terms of the usual shy heroine, she has a strong character and has nice moments where she shows that strength, such as standing up for Akari, having the courage to confess while knowing she'll be rejected, and even calling out on Ryo's bullshit and not giving him a pass despite being in love with him. Of course, since this is a Sakisaka manga, Yuna fell for Ryo rather fast and kept her romantic feelings towards him even after getting rejected and has another boy that likes her. But at least her relationship with him ended up being incredibly sweet and cute, which I'll touch more on that later. But before that, I'm gonna move on to our other heroine, Akari. Her idea of love is more casual, where she prefers to talk or date around to get to know them, and has had a boyfriend before. She often gets misunderstood by others, even by Yuna at some point, but is actually a sweet girl who cares deeply about her friends and family. Honestly, I wish I could say more about her, but the more I read, the more it felt like Yuna was the favorite of the author. Cause Akari's character was not as strong as it could have been, and even her idea of love wasn't shown much, and her romance ended up being the falling for the male lead first and in a short time cliche. And it's such a damn shame because she would have really stood out among Sakisaga's usual heroines and be one of the more mature ones. And I just feel so sorry for her. Akari really does go through shit. As I've mentioned, she often gets misunderstood, and that includes her classmates, friends, and even her mother. So, the thing is, her mother remarried and Ryo became her stepbrother not too long ago. And because they're both around the same age and not blood related, the mother often worries that there's some hanky-panky going on in the house when she's not looking. So Akari tries hard to prove to her mom that nothing inappropriate goes on and treats Ryo as if she's her brother. Unfortunately, Ryo didn't share the same sentiment at the time and made it difficult for her, which I'll touch on when I get there. Another thing is that she doesn't really get a nice sweet romance like Yuna does. What I mean is that she gets surprise kissed by both leads and both the context of the kisses suck. And her romance with the other male lead Kazu was one of the weakest and more frustrating parts of the manga. As I've said earlier, Akari ends up falling into the usual cliche in Sakisaka manga with the female lead falls first in a short time, which doesn't really work in this case, especially for her type of character. I was expecting something different from Yuna, like maybe she doesn't crush on Kazu until much later and maybe Kazu falls first and puts in the effort. Or if it was something like Akari being interested in Kazu and asks him out, gets shot down but wouldn't make a big deal about it since it's not like she was in love with him yet, and that's something I could get behind as it would fall under her idea of love. But no, it's nothing like that. It's just the usual, and unlike Yuna and Ryo, she and Kazu don't get together until around the end. Which brings me to one of the male leads, Ryo. He's Akari's stepbrother and reminds Yuna of Prince Philip. Though, despite his prince-like appearance, he can be a bit crass and selfish, but later shown to have a good heart and becomes a good boyfriend. Ryo started out rough for me, especially his selfishness, which was him wanting Akari to see him more than a stepbrother despite Akari making it clear to him that they're family and nothing more. He's had a crush on her for quite some time, even before his dad married Akari's mom, but sadly his crush ends up being his stepsister and hasn't let go of his feelings since. Which brings that forced kiss I mentioned earlier. Luckily, Yuna calls him out on that bullshit and tells him to think about Akari, so he was able to let it go. While it was kinda short, but I still liked how it was handled. Didn't drag for long and it didn't end abruptly either. Once that was over, Ryo does grow into a better person and more of a fun character, and he turns out to be an awesome boyfriend to Yuna. While how he fell for her and moved on from Akari was rather fast, I still loved his relationship with her, such as how they both communicate and are honest with each other. Like when they had this small fight, if you can call it, he didn't want their conversation to end like that and quickly turned around to talk things out. It's also incredibly cute how he does a little brag to Kazu by referring Yuna as his girlfriend, and you can see how much he cherishes her. Thank God Sakisaka had these two become a couple around the middle, because I love them as a couple, and really shows how well she can write the leads after they get together. Most of her main leads get together around the end, though that can go for most other shoujo, so we don't get to see much of what they're like as boyfriend or girlfriend. So I found Ryo and Yuna to be a nice change of pace. I hope Sakisaka will do more of that in her future manga. Last, our other male lead, Kazu. He's Yuna's supposed childhood friend and neighbor, and loves movies, so much so that he hopes to become a director one day. Unfortunately, he has trouble with that passion as his family absolutely does not approve of something like that, especially that he had to deal with the aftermath of his older brother achieving his own dreams without the support of his parents. So it's like he has to set an example in a way to show his parents that he won't end up like his brother and disappoint them. Okay, despite having more to his character than Ryo, I'm very mixed on Kazu, leaning more towards dislike. I do like how there's more to him, and his family drama was one of the more interesting parts of the manga, but I do wish they showed more of his passion for movies. He said he wants to become a director, yet we see him only watching movies, rather than analyzing his favorites, making notes of the cinematography and all that, or even making short films himself. I can understand if he hesitated on joining a club where he can express his creativity due to his family, but I still wish they actually showed his passion for directing or the art of film more than him just watching movies. Though what really kept me from fully liking Kazu is his romance with Akari. Truly my least favorite part of the manga. At first, their romance seemed somewhat promising. He was a bit hard to read, but I do like the idea of these two becoming friends and coming to each other when they need to vent about their family issues and all that. But once the romance comes, that's where it goes south. Kazu comes across like he's leading Akari at times. He can be a bit of a jerk to her, and rejects her when she came up to him and asked him out cause he thought Ryo still liked her at that time.
You are made of stupid.
Oh, yeah, he knew cause he saw the kiss, cause of course he did. I thought that was a cheap way to get him to reject Akari rather than him just not being interested at the time. Oh, and that forced kiss. I honestly hated that more than Ryo's forced kiss. It comes completely out of nowhere. It leads Akari on more, despite him rejecting her. It didn't seem like a passionate kiss either, and the kiss ends up kinda being forgotten later. Like at some point, I thought my brain made up the random kiss because of how they just don't mention it again, even though Akari should be having some kind of reaction, or get angry at him like how Yuna doesn't let Ryo's nonsense slide. It was just a mess, and not a good mess. Oh, and when I said that he's Yuna's supposed childhood friend, I mean he's like Daiki in this manga where they say he's the female lead's childhood friend but they only show it for a short time. Hell, we rarely get scenes with just Yuna and Kazu, showing them what they're like as friends. We get more scenes with Ryo and Kazu, and those two became fast friends at some point in the manga. Though I will say they are pretty funny. Well, despite my complaints, I've enjoyed the manga for the most part. The friendship between Yuna and Akari was great. I loved Ryo and Yuna as a couple, and there's not many moments where I felt like the manga wasted its time. Though I will say the moment where the manga lost me was around the last few chapters. The drama felt so forced and I stopped caring because of how they would make it a big deal but ends up not being a big deal. Such as the whole, will they or won't they move away drama. However, it doesn't last long, and thank God. And I do like how Akari actually does move out as it's a good opportunity for her to pursue her passion. I was afraid she was going to stay so she can be with Kazu, but nope, she puts her goals first and I appreciate that. Again, despite all my issues with the manga, I still enjoyed the series and I'm very glad to own it. I found each volume for around $4 to $5 at my local shop and I just couldn't pass up on that deal. This one is from a collection of one-shots, but since I wanted to include only a few one-shots in this video, I'm just gonna focus on Mascara Blues. Mascara Blues has a pretty intriguing premise that I didn't expect to see among Sakisaka's works. Taking her usual trope of the female lead falling in love easily, but actually making that into a plot point. It's about a high school girl named Mugino, who falls in love easily, but once those feelings are reciprocated, she immediately loses interest. Again, I found it to be refreshing as we don't have the usual first love cliche, and it shows that just because you experience the thrill of a crush, it doesn't always mean you really like that person, if that makes sense. Cause stuff like that does happen. She often complains about it to her friend and love advisor, Shuya, and this time, the male lead falls for the female lead first. It's hinted multiple times that he's always had a crush on her, and if she ever confessed to him, you'd know he'll say yes. And Shuya is actually a decent male lead. I don't really have issues with him. I do like how he's a bit different from other Sakisaka male leads by starting out as the close friend and love advisor, and isn't someone Mugino would fall for immediately. I mean, she didn't fully understand why, and even thought this is just another crush that'll pass by like the others, which would make her romantic feelings for him a bit genuine. It also helps that they've been friends for a while. I do like how this one-shot shows that the person you end up with can be who you least expect it to be, and I thought it was handled just fine. I even liked how Mugino and Shuya had a friends-to-lovers dynamic and enjoyed their interactions. I so wish we could see what they're like as a couple, but since this is a one-shot, it's not going to be possible. But I was still satisfied after reading it. It was decent, a few melodramatic moments, but I still liked it. And I really liked how the art looks in this one, and I would love it if we get another friends to lovers type of romance like this again. Blue Spring Ride was one of Sakisaka's manga I tried to get into as a teen, but randomly dropped it for reasons I can't remember. But now that I finally read it, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. At first. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't end up disliking it, and as always, I shall explain my thoughts as I discuss more on this. Blue Spring Ride is about a high schooler named Futaba Yoshioka who wanted a fresh start in her high school after having a tough time in middle school. During that time, she had a lot of admirers from her male classmates, and that led to her female classmates ganging up and or ostracizing her. However, she does have one good memory, and that is when she met Cole during her first year of middle school. She does meet him again later, and he's not how she remembered him. Aside from having a different last name, he's taller, and his voice is deeper. In other words, puberty. While their relationship isn't what it's like before, they do start out the series as friends, or at least on friendly terms. The manga truly begins when Futaba leaves her fake friends and spends more time with Ko, getting to know him and what he's been through over the years, and meeting all sorts of new people. Let me just say, the first 15 chapters were perfect. From how Futaba and Ko were introduced, how we see more to Futaba's character than just her crush on Ko. I love how she grew as a person, how there's more to Ko's character than just being a mysterious pretty boy. His personal journey of overcoming grief was touching. The drama was handled so well. The friendly rivalry between Futaba and Makita was handled so well. And the build-up of Futaba and Ko's relationship and how close they would get was something I've been wanting from Sakisaka's romance manga. This scene right here was amazing and almost brought a tear to my eye. It was all so good and I thought this was going to become my favorite. And then things went downhill around chapter 16. The tone of the manga took quite a turn, and that's when it felt like Sakisaka just wanted to pull in another character, 2 more at that, for the sake of drama in order to extend the manga and not getting the 2 leads together despite their growth being so incredibly strong in the first 15 chapters. So it's like taking many steps backwards. I even started to lose interest when it just seems like a circle of drama was happening and nothing was truly moving forward like in the beginning. And the thing is, I can understand what they were going for with Ko, about how bonding through having similar trauma or problems isn't always the healthy of relationship and how we shouldn't have to carry someone else's burden. That's not a bad thing to include, but the execution wasn't great in my opinion. This girl, whose name I forgot, is such a nothing character. At least we get to know this guy before he got more involved with the story. But her, all I know is that she and Ko have similar issues and bonded through that, and jealous of Futaba since Ko has a thing for her. Other than that, she's mostly forgettable. Moving on to the other character added to the story, Toma. According to Sakisaka, he ended up being popular amongst the readers, so she decided to include him more. However, that ended up not being a good thing as most of his persistent actions come across as incredibly desperate and a bit cringe. In a, I feel sorry for you, but this is painful to watch type of cringe. He still is a pretty good character and I love his friends. They really captured the spirit of goofy friends hanging out. But the whole dating arc with him and Futaba felt like such a waste of time. Here's the thing, I wouldn't be opposed to the female lead going out with the second male lead, But if she went out with him and doesn't even like him that much, then it just feels like complete filler. Like, what's the point? We're just getting this guy's hopes up, and most of his inner thoughts is whether or not Futaba's really into him and being self-conscious about it. There's nothing interesting happening, and we know Futaba still likes Ko and will choose him in a heartbeat if he wanted to go out with her. And the dynamic between these two isn't as cute as I thought it would be. I just stopped being interested after some time. It really becomes a drag until around the end when Futaba and Ko finally get together. This truly would have been such a great manga if the pacing was kept the same as chapters 1 through 15. The manga could have focused on the other characters more. Have Futaba and Ko tackle their issues as a couple, or at least grow incredibly close to where it's satisfying when they finally become a couple. Like, look at this page here. It felt like they're trying to justify the whole Ko and Futaba not being together and dragging it out. And the thing is, they have a point here. Ko was not in the right mindset and can't just accept Futaba's confession with how he was at the time. But with how the events of the manga happen, it's still hard to not get annoyed with how the manga handled it. Again, if the manga kept the same pacing and flow like in the beginning and didn't bring in drama for the sake of it, this could have been really good. However, while the story went downhill for me, does that include the characters? For me, no. I'd say a few of them got better later in the manga. First, let me talk about our heroine, Futaba. I think she's great. Probably one of the best Sakisaka heroines. I love her goofiness and that she has more of a character outside of Ko. Because again, one of my issues with most heroines is that they revolve too much around their crush and first love, but with Futaba, she doesn't fall into that. And her personal issues really struck a chord with me. I understand wanting to change for the better and wanting things to be different, but it doesn't come easily, so we would have to work very hard for it. So whenever we see Futaba trying, you can tell she's really doing the best she can, and it makes you want to root for her. And I do feel for Futaba when she had to put up a tomboy facade so she can have friends. It sucks that when you realize the people you consider friends aren't your real friends at all, especially if you're the type who has trouble making friends. You end up sticking with the cruddy ones as long as you can, or just put up with it, since it's better than being alone. Unfortunately, her character came to a halt during the whole dating Toma arc. Though it did make me dislike her, it's more like she kinda stayed the same and stopped growing. Next up is Makira. In the beginning, we see that she's ostracized by her female classmates due to getting attention from her male classmates. Similar to what Futaba went through in middle school, Makira is fully aware of what her classmates think of her, so she would often eat outside to get away from it, even if the weather isn't good. Man, Makira deserves her own protection squad, and I shall adopt her. But anyway, her friendship with Futaba is very sweet, and I do love how their friendship continued to develop despite both liking Ko at the start. Makira herself is definitely one of the better friend characters, just like Rumi. And funnily enough, they both look like they could be twins. And she may look like an absolute sweetheart, which she is, but she's almost like a big sister of the friend group at times. She's got some sass to her. She's cute and she knows it, and will hold a grudge if you take her cupcake. I mean, same. What kind of an asshole just takes someone's cupcake without making sure they don't want it? But anyway, Makira's great and stayed consistently great. But I wish her romance story was written better, and she deserved better cause how it was handled was such bullcrap. So Makira gets together with one of Toma's friends, and he seems chill. But we don't see much of these two growing as a couple. Just a few pleasant conversations. And when asked out by that friend, she doesn't accept immediately. Her reasoning being, I don't want to go out with someone who asks me out on a whim. And you know what? Good for you. Don't just accept for the sake of it, or just cause you got rejected not long ago. Though the good moment was gone cause it resulted in her falling for him already. Ugh, it happened way too fast. I let out a big fat what when she accepted being his girlfriend just a few pages later. Like, what? Where's the build-up? The chemistry? Having a few nice conversations isn't enough for me to want to root for them or be happy for this. Well, moving on to the other friend of the group, and since my mouth just can't pronounce her name, I'm just gonna call her Moo. So Moo started out mysterious at first. She's quiet and claimed to not have any personal connections with her classmates during their first year. She has a crush on Tanaka, Ko's older brother and teacher, and it's shown that she has made advances in the past, but he would reject her. And thank God for that. Out of everyone in the friend group, I'd say she's the weakest. Her character revolved too much around Tanaka at the start and wasn't very interesting. But I will say she does get better after getting rejected by Tanaka, so that's nice. She's even got some fun moments like when she's keeping an eye on Ko. And I do like how she's firm in protecting Futaba's relationship with this guy while other people obviously wanted her to be with Ko. Like, just cause everyone else has been rooting for Futaba and Ko to get together, that doesn't mean we gotta ruin these two's relationship and Futaba's happiness. Which this asshole from Strobe Edge got the message. She even states that it's on Ko for not making any moves sooner. It shows how mature she is and does not play around when it comes to dating and her friend's happiness. Last one of the friend group, Kominato. When he first appeared, I thought I was gonna hate him. He seemed annoying and I wasn't a fan how he starts out as a moose simp, but he does grow more into that as Ko's friend and we get a small backstory of why he's so smitten with Mu. It was wholesome and I wish the manga put more focus on those two than just Kominato being obvious with his crush and getting so much shot down. It was much more interesting when these two would have discussions and spend time as friends. Sadly, they didn't get that much focus, but it's nice how they both end up being better than how they were in the first few chapters. So, Kominato turned out to be an alright dude. Now, it's time to finally talk about Ko. He's had an interesting reputation on the internet, and I've even talked about him in one of my TikToks. Now that I finally reread Blue Spring Ride, I really don't understand the complaints about Ko. If you simply don't like him, then that's fine. But I still wouldn't go as far as to label him as a red flag. He's just someone who unfortunately lost his mother and hasn't properly grieved. He doesn't really know how to handle going through such a tough time, all the emotions that come with it, and went as far as to hang out with sketchy people during the night. It's why this scene was so powerful because Futaba was showing how much he cared and wanting to help him while trying to understand his pain. Even Kominato had some trouble getting through to him, but still showed his support as a friend. I do appreciate that the manga took their time with the events of Ko's mom's death rather than just saying she died. They showed us what it's like with Ko having to take care of his mother and watch her be in pain in the hospital, how he couldn't have spent much time with her due to studying, and Ko going through the pain of losing his mother and grieving and mourning. I felt the emotions with what Ko was going through. Out of all Sakisaka male leads I've read, Ko was such a breath of fresh air. He's not just the quiet and mysterious or the cool guy in school, he's also snarky and got a bit of a tsundere streak going on. Even has some moments of him being petty. He's also shown to be his own person rather than just the female lead's love interest. I just wish the romance with him and Futaba was handled better, but other than that, he's great. So yeah, while I do have some things I really didn't like, I don't think Blue Spring Ride is all that bad. Just could have been better in my opinion. While this isn't my favorite, I can definitely see why it's Sakisaka's most popular manga. And those are all my thoughts on 7 of Sakisaka's manga. It's been a nice journey reading some of her stuff. I understand that her manga tends to have mixed reactions. I've seen readers where they don't like her writing and find her works repetitive, and there's the other half where they love her works. And honestly, I can see where they're coming from. As I've read her manga, I've noticed a lot of similarities and tropes and cliches she would often use. So much so that I've made a bingo card. After making this, I went back to look over all the stuff I've read to see how many bingos I would get. Funnily enough, her popular manga are the ones that have an almost full bingo. The one that doesn't have too many of the usual Sakisaka tropes is Mascara Blues. Though, does that mean I think Io Sakisaka is a bad mangaka? Well, I don't think she is. I'll explain as I list out my pros and cons with her stuff. First, the good. Sakisaka does a really good job at writing teenage characters and does put good use in the high school setting. It's a pet peeve of mine whenever there's teen characters and they don't look or behave anything like it. So I was surprised with how they're written as believable teens. Of course, it's not completely realistic since this is still fiction and some of the things will be dramatized, but if you've read Sakisaka's side thoughts, it makes sense why. She would take some of her real-life experiences and use that as a reference. She would mention that a few times in some of her manga. Next is her art. Absolutely lovely. If anyone were to ask me to think of shoujo art style, Io Sakisaka would be one of the artists. It's soft, pretty to look at, I like how she draws faces, and even her older stuff still looks good. Like, take a look at this Mascara Blues page, one of my favorites. I just love the Betty Boop eyes here. I do wish there's more variety in male lead appearances, but it's not completely bad. And I do like how interactive she is in her manga. I don't know how people feel about these random Sakisaka thoughts, but I personally like them. It shows how she likes to engage with her readers, and it's fun seeing what she's like. For example, I enjoy learning about her pet chinchillas. I love chinchillas, and it was nice getting to know their names and appearances. I wish I could have a pet chinchilla. She also included recommended songs she would listen to, which I went ahead and put them all into a playlist. I'll link the playlist, and the playlist will always be on my channel for y'all to check out. It's pretty nice. Okay, I've got all the positives out of the way, now time for the cons. While using real-life experience as a reference has worked for the most part, it can also be an issue. Take one of my usual complaints for example, the female lead falling in love super fast. Well, there's a reason why a majority of our heroines have that trait, and that's cause Sakisaka experienced that herself. The thing is, having one or two heroines with that trait wouldn't be a bad thing. But when almost all your love stories include the heroine falling in love fast and covering the theme of first love, it can get stale. Which brings on to my next point, Sakisaka not getting out of her comfort zone. I truly do believe that she has the potential of writing a variety of things. One of them being the leads not getting together in the near end and the readers getting to see what they're like as a couple. She's shown that she can write that with Yuna and Ryo. Like, maybe she can write something outside the high school setting, or try a different approach with writing her romance. After reading Mascara Blues, I think she has the ability to make a good friends to lovers romance. Hell, I would love a manga with a male lead like Ando, one of her most well-written characters. And we'll see in the future, she does still have a long career ahead of her. My next issue, I don't know the word for this, but it's when parts of her manga feel like filler, like it's wasting time. It tends to be an issue with some romance manga when there's too much focus with adding drama and love triangles than the important things. Of course there are some shoujo where you would read simply for the drama, but in Sakisaka's case, it's not the same. Of course, that could also be a matter of taste, but for me personally, I'm not a fan with how there would be forced drama in her manga. It's even worse when it feels like nothing is really happening, so it would feel like a drag at times. Well, those are all my points. And again, I don't think she's that bad of a mangaka. Does her stuff feel repetitive? Sure. But I think her manga are best for when you're not in the mood for anything new and are familiar with her stuff and don't completely dislike her tropes. Something to read if you're in the mood for something light and want pretty art to go with it. While I wouldn't say she's one of my favorite mangakas, I can still see myself checking out her new stuff if I'm in the mood. However, if you are new to her manga and wonder which are good to start with, then I recommend these three. Okay, last thing I want to do to wrap things up, here's my personal ranking of the manga I've read. It was tough choosing my number one, but I went with Love Me Not. Despite my issues, I still enjoyed the manga and most likely would go back and reread. Here's a fun thing I wanted to include, which is Character Spotlight, where I list who I consider to be the best heroine, male lead, second male lead, and couple. First, the best heroine would have to go to Emmy from My Lover. She's such an underrated heroine and I was moved by her strength and kind heart despite all she's been through, especially when it came to her sister and how she remained loyal. Next, the title for best male lead shall go to Cole from Blue Spring Ride. No surprise after praising him so much. I hope there'll be more male leads like him in the future, where they're written more than just a love interest and popular guy. Now, for who I consider to be the best second male lead, again, no surprise, it's Ando from Strobe Edge. Holy shit, what a great character. I truly hope we'll get a male lead like him in the future. And I'm a sucker for romance stories where the guy changes his way for the girl he likes. Last, the best couple. This one will depend on the reader, but for me personally, the pair who deserves the best couple title will have to go to Ryo and Yuna from Love Me Not. While Ryo falling for Yuna came out of nowhere since we just dealt with the Akari situation, these two still ended up being a sweet and adorable couple. It's hard to not love these two when they have scenes like these, and Ryo was able to avoid unnecessary couple fight drama that would have lasted a couple chapters by talking out with Yuna. So again, it's all so great. And that's everything. Oh man, that was a lot, but I still enjoyed myself. I would love to do something like this again with a different shoujo or josei mangaka in the future. Well, thank you all for watching and sticking to the end. Hope y'all will have a good day, and do leave your thoughts in the comments, and maybe eat some dumplings. See ya guys.